Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Media Boat Podcast. Thank you for joining us. Today is March the 24th, 2021. If you don't know what the Media Boat Podcast is, we are a podcast that gives you news and thoughts and feelings about the newest in media, and that includes movies, television, video games, and music, not necessarily in that order. My name is Matt. His name is Mike.
I'm Mike. He's Matt. We are Media Boat Podcast 270 something
That's a lot of
episodes down.
That's many.
And so we had a long podcast last week.
Mm-hmm.
We might have another one on our hands. We have a
lot
of thoughts.
Stuff just keeps happening, and we're trying to keep up to date on things like award season and stuff. So we have a lot to cover. Sorry, it's the time of the year.
Yeah, so the news might be kind of shortened, but that's because we have a lot of thoughts that just keep happening over the course of the week.
Yeah. And
so without spending any more time
right.
on an intro.
Exactly. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Regular show this week. I know we went reverse last week, but hey, let's do the classic thing. Start with movies this week. And we always start
with what works.
Yes, with what works. Well, I mean, not that it didn't work. It was fine. But movies this week, there's stuff to talk about in movies, so we'll start there. First up, box office, a little bit of box office for you. Raya and the Last Dragon, $5.1 million at number one. That's sitting at 23.5 million domestic, and that's just theaters. Tom and Jerry.
It hit 5 million last week. So I see a plateauing here for about a month now. So that's just a good base hit of a 5 million each week.
And we don't know how successful it's doing on the Disney Plus Premier Access version. However, our first news story, which we'll get to in a moment, may explain that. Maybe it is doing quite well. Number two in the box office, though, Tom and Jerry, its HBO Max equivalent, notwithstanding, it made another $3.1 million, 33.7 domestic so far for that one. Number three and four, kind of rounding out the top four this week. Guess the fifth didn't crack that magic million.
Nope.
Chaos walking in number three with 1.9 million, and The Courier with 1.8. Those are your movies. Upcoming, though, one movie for the 26th set to release. Oh. Sorry.
Technically.
Right.
So
one movie for this Friday.
Yes.
One movie for the end of the month. It's weird. Don't worry about it. Nobody. I don't know what that is. Do you know what this is?
It's a Taken style movie starring Bob Odenkirk from Better Call Saul.
Okay, sure.
He is nobody in that film.
I guess so. And then the one everybody's been waiting for, Godzilla vs. Kong, which, as you well know, is getting an HBO Max release the same day as its theatrical for about a month. So looking forward to that.
While that film technically comes out next week, we're telling you that it's coming out now.
Yeah.
Because the release date is literally 1 week, next Wednesday, 3/31, yeah. Because it had to sneak in there before the end of the fiscal year, according to contracts.
The downside to that is that, of course, is the day we record this podcast. So we probably will not be able to talk about it until the following week.
Hey, I'll find a way to watch it.
I'm not going to have a time to watch it. I'm going to be working, so I don't know about you.
I can watch it at 2x speed, like 3 o'clock in the morning.
I could do that, but I own a 4K television. So why would I do that? It's
That's right. Silly. Why would you do it? So I'll tell you if you should or should not watch it then next week.
Duly noted. If I should or should not watch it in 2 times speed on a computer monitor. Got it. Moving on. Let's go into our first news story here. And as I teased, Disney has made some announcements in kind of the wake of Raya the Last Dragon's release. They're kind of tidying up some new releases, judging by the performance of their Premier Access program. They don't explicitly say that, but you can glean from context clues that they're saying that, hey, this thing made some money. First up, 2 big new releases, Black Widow and Cruella, are now going to premiere on Disney Plus as well as theaters instead of being purely theatrical releases. First being Cruella, which is set to arrive on May 28th, while Black Widow has been pushed back to July 9th, its new date. Both titles will be offered by their Premier Access mode for a $30 original cost, just like the existing ones. Yeah, I don't know what that is. This means that the next Marvel film following Black Widow's release, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, has itself also been bumped back to September 3rd. No word on if it's going to be Premier Access. By September, we might have a better idea of how successful the theatrical model will be. So we'll revisit that in the coming months. Meanwhile, Pixar's new film, Luca, will be taking the Soul route and will launch exclusively on Disney Plus on June 18th. No Premier Access necessary, with no additional cost, which is what that means. As for the titles inherited from 20th Century Studios, they have also been postponed, but they'll retain their theatrical-only releases. That includes Free Guy, that weird-ass video game-themed movie, still slated for October 13th. August 13th. Saw the 13th and I just jumped. The King's Man, the next in the Kingsman franchise, December 22nd. Deep Water for January 14th of next year, 2022. And Death on the Nile, February 11th, 2022. While optimism towards theatrical releases has been increasing in recent weeks, thanks to the wonder of the vaccinations, major markets like LA and New York City are still capping auditoriums at 25%, or only 50 to 100 people per. So Disney isn't releasing the streaming numbers for Raya yet, as we mentioned, they never do. But it has made $23.4 million in theaters and 71 million domestic or globally. So it's a moneymaker already, and it's only barely walked into its release. So yeah, I don't blame them for going whole hog on the Premier Access model for their newest, biggest films.
Well, at least for Marvel, or in-house stuff. Basically, because the Marvel films make a ton of money. Two, they make a ton of money because they cost a ton of money, anywhere between $200 to $250 million per production, not including marketing.
Budget has to be a consideration here. The more expensive the movie is, the more likely they probably are going to pull the trigger on that Premier Access revenue stream. It's interesting, though, that we're seeing a division between the Disney stuff and the Pixar stuff, though. I did not anticipate it. I was shocked kind of when they did it with Soul, but the fact that they're doubling down and just doing a regular Disney Plus release for Luca as well. I don't know what that says about the Pixar stuff. Do they think that theatrical release for those non-franchised Pixar films is not as lucrative of a thing, and so they're more willing to put it on that model? We saw how quickly they turned around on Onward too. Same thing.
I'm wondering if it's some kind of contract, like release when they were purchased. Because, as you mentioned, with Onward, they didn't do a Premier Access. Soul didn't do a Premier Access. Luca, not doing a Premier Access. Pixar stuff has not done Premier Access.
I don't know. I'm not in the business side of Disney, obviously. So I don't know when some sort of the last contract they signed with them, but it depends on when it was, right? Because Disney Plus was only probably like a fever dream somebody had back when they originally signed those papers back in 2007 when they bought the studio, right? There's no way they would have known that streaming would be a revenue source. There would be no way that a contract would have been written about that stuff. Back then, they were still doing DVD deals was their home distribution deal, right?
Yes, but if it's written in contract language that Disney gets final say on distribution, that specific language could mean why it's free and not other companies like Marvel or even Star Wars, which were both recently acquired, whereas Pixar was 2004, 2006.
Yeah. I am going to say that it's probably your first theory and maybe less your second theory. I definitely think you're onto something with that budget thing. I think the bigger these movies are and the more they cost, I think they're more likely to want to try to protect themselves. Maybe the Pixar stuff is getting cheaper as the technology gets more refined. I could be wrong, but it's possible.
Possible, because
Yeah.
Disney doesn't really make a whole lot of money from movies. They make it from merchandising.
It's
And you
merchandising,
can merchandise the
revenue,
hell
and
out
all
of
that stuff.
animated features more than you can out of live action features.
You're right, but that theory kind of deflates when you think of the Marvel part, though, because then the Marvel movies are probably even more of a merchandise success story right now than the animated stuff. Like, consider the merchandise you can sell off Black Widow compared to the merchandise you can sell off Raya. Way different. Way different.
But also consider that when they do contracts for these live action films, especially Marvel, if these films hit a certain tier of box office revenue, the actors and directors and executives get bonuses on top of their contracts already. It's already written into it. So extra theory, they're paying off about 60-70% for Black Widow ahead of what it's going to make, and then reworked the contracts to say, if you meet this new box office revenue, then you'll get the remaining 30%. Or 30-40%, whatever. The remaining bulk of whatever the bonus structure payout is.
Very well could be the case. And we'll probably never know, really, what the inner machinations of all this stuff is. I mean, but what we do know is that it's kind of exciting that we get to see all these movies at home. We don't have to go anywhere to see Black Widow, which is nice. Although I probably won't actually watch it anyways, but that's beside the point.
Would you like to come over and do a movie day?
We'll see. Rain check. We'll see.
Because I can tell you right now, I'm already planning on buying it for Premiere Access, having a whole movie setup with,
of course,
full-on concessions in my kitchen setup.
You got those Mike and Ike's?
Thin Mints. Well, Thin Mints.
Junior Mints.
Junior Mints.
Junior Mints in the movie thing.
Yeah, Junior Mints. I know there's still a box of Thin Mints up on my fridge. That may not be good by then, but I will probably eat them before then.
I literally just finished the last of the Girl Scout cookies today. They're gone. They're gone. They're all gone. Anyway, and the birthday cake, it's all gone too.
No, the triple chocolate cake.
I know. I ate it. It's in here. So yeah, who knows? But yeah, the bottom line of this story is that, stuff that was previously in the no man's land of theaters can now be accessed from your home, whether it be premium or not. And that's good news for people who like to stay home. So
yes, I wonder if Marvel's hand was kind of forced because they couldn't back up any further movies, considering they're still releasing 4 movies this year.
I would imagine that that's definitely part of it, is that there was a logjam and they had to pull trigger at some point. I have a feeling that that Kevin Feige was very angry at the end of this meeting. However it went. All right, let's talk about our second story here. One thing that Kevin Feige is not invited to this year is the Academy Awards, because there's no big Best Picture nominee for a Marvel movie this time. However, what there is are now new news coming out about its remote presentation. Producers of the 93rd annual Oscars sent an email to all nominees explaining the rules and expectations for the ceremony and insisted that the event will be done safely. The event will be hosted at Union Station in LA with some live moments taking place at the Dolby Theater in Hollywood. He said, quote, "For those of you unable to attend because of scheduling or continued uneasiness about traveling, we want you to know that there will not be an option to Zoom in for the show. They're arranging travel instructions and having an on-site COVID safety team with PCR tests on hand to ensure a safe evening. Only presenters, nominees, and their guests can attend the pre-show event and ceremony. As for speeches, the producers said they have but one request. Quote, read the room. That's in all caps. Tell a story. Story is in all caps as well. If you're thanking someone, say their name, not their title. So I guess bottom line on this one, they're trying to wrangle everybody in one place so that they don't have the awkwardness of all those Zoom squares like they had at the Emmys.
Right. They're also trying to wrangle in the 10-second delay between them cutting to people and like, oh, I won, but I don't know that for another 10 seconds. So watch my reaction in anticipation. Or you get the John Legend bit where he gets announced that he's won and Chrissy Teigen is live streaming him, but he's cutting avocados or something in the kitchen. And you have people in sweatpants and just not in their best gown or attire.
Yeah. So that's the first half of it, is they're trying to make it at least appear as if it's business as usual. And then the second half is that it seems like they're further trying to streamline I keep wanting to say performance. I don't know why. The presentation. Speeches. The presentation by making sure that these speeches run smoothly. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about this, because like you would think that being the last of the many, many, many award shows that we've seen tackle a remote presentation, that they seem to be the most adamant about like, no, this is going to be the way we always did it, just did a different place this time. It just seems weird. I don't know.
It's going to be more weird when you have people who are winning awards not be able to show up to accept them because of, travel restrictions.
So yeah, it's going to be a lot of the presenter being like, and I'm accepting this on so-and-so's behalf.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a lot of that, which will be disappointing, I think. You could have had a lot of, this could actually put a damper on a lot of the big stories of the night, right? Because if you have a situation where one of your big leaders like Chloe, Nomadland director, who I'm now afraid of pronouncing her last name incorrectly, because apparently the thing I heard a person say is wrong. What if she can't show, and then if she takes the night, then it's going to be weird. It's going to be awkward. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But it'll be interesting. Just as all these award shows have been, it'll be an interesting train wreck to watch. And maybe it won't be a train wreck. I don't know, but we'll see.
Yep. And also for that last part, they're trying to get away from big political speeches that kind of dominated the previous night or the last year's, which was the get out to vote.
Yeah. Well, I have to tell them, you can't stop it. It's still going to happen. This is Hollywood. What are you thinking? And that's probably for the best.
Right.
All right. My watch just told me there are new episodes of Kenan and Young Wally. Anyways.
Yes, there are.
Anything else to say about the Academy Awards, or are we ready to move on?
Nope. We'll be watching them next month. I think we're ready to move on. And by moving on, we're talking about a couple thoughts.
One kind of follow-up thought and one brand new piping hot thought. Do you want to do yours first, or do you want me to just do mine? I think you may have more to talk about with yours.
I probably do have more to talk about with mine.
4 hours worth of entertainment. You should have something to say about it.
I have about 4 hours worth to say about it, but I'm not going to say it here.
Let's not do that here. Okay, well, I'll go real quick on mine then. So last week I said that I had attempted to watch Netflix's Mank, Best Picture leader Mank, and was unsuccessful. Well, I rectified that. I finished it over the course of this week. That sounds like I took a long time, but really it was just one sitting and then like another sitting to watch the final 30 minutes of it. But I finished it. I watched the entire thing. I've checked that off of my Best Picture list. And I landed more positive than I thought I was going to on it by the end of it, but I still don't think I like it. I think that it does a good job of telling, and I think that it does a good job of what it's set out to do, but the problem I have with it is very much the kind of movie that you can see from a mile away that is bioengineered to be nominated for Best Picture. I mean, think about it. It's based on a very famous, very important to film movie. It's the story of the screenwriter of Citizen Kane. Oscar bait written all over already. On top of that, they try to stylize it like it's Citizen Kane. It is shot in black and white in a mode that tries to emulate some of the imperfections of film from that era of film. So there's film grain that's like a lot of the lighting is designed like it would be in a 40s film, or in this case, late 30s film. It's set to like have like artificial like those like, I don't know what you call them, like the bubbles in the film that show up every occasionally.
Cellulose.
Yeah, or whatever. I don't know if there's a technical term. But yeah, and so it's designed to do that throughout.
It's the film celluloid that's bubbling. But yeah.
Which is, let me tell you, very distracting. And then on top of that, it also, the sound is all recorded in a way where it sounds like how they used to record sound for films, where everything sounds like it's just in a recording booth. Not even a recording booth. It sounds like it's like, I don't know, it's weirdly echoey and just loud. It sounds like all the mics are hot. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so all of that kind of distracts from the movie for me. And I kept thinking about the artifice of it the whole time, as opposed to getting really involved in what was happening, the story that was happening. The story itself is fairly interesting, especially if you don't know the story of Herman Mankiewicz. And it definitely goes some places that I did not anticipate, even knowing that history myself. But the script is also kind of distracting because it is a script that's kind of old. It has this old feeling. Apparently it's been sitting on a shelf for 20, 30 years. And you can almost tell, it feels like it's written from a bygone era of film. And not the bygone era of film that it's trying to emulate, but that kind of 70s, 80s, like kind of script writing where, everything these people are saying is a screenwriter talking and then not necessarily people talking. Like, it doesn't sound super natural, the dialogue here. It sounds super written. And that's your mileage may vary, I think, at that point. I think you're either going to be somebody who's way into that and be like, oh man, a classic screenplay. They don't make these like they used to. Or you're going to be someone like me who's like, God, I wish these people just talked more naturally to each other and you'd still be able to communicate the same story. So there's a lot of hangups, is I think the thing that I had with this film. A lot of distractions, a lot of hangups. But underneath all that, they accomplish what they're trying to do, and it is a very stylistic way of doing it. Is it a style I like? No. But I think there are people out there that are going to be like, this is going to be catnip for them. And that may include the Academy. And this is where I'm kind of maybe giving you a little bit of leeway here on my Best Picture thing. I still think this is Nomadland's race to lose. But I can absolutely, after finishing this movie, I can absolutely envision the artist style upset here based on the Academy's love for itself alone.
Funny you bring that up, because I was just about to bring up the artist and ask you when you remember watching it.
The two films that come to mind that fit this mold are The Artist and La La Land. Is very much in line with that.
Except both of those were musicals.
Yeah, that's the weird part, is that this is, unlike those movies, it's also not a musical, but they can't really make it a musical if they tried.
Hey, Alan Menken can make anything a musical.
Yeah, well, he wasn't involved, thank God. So yeah.
I'm sorry. I mean, Lin-Manuel Miranda can make anything a musical.
in the Heights theaters and HBO Max later this year.
Not sponsored.
Not sponsored. No. So yeah, I think you should probably watch this. I want to get your take on kind of the stylistic choices here and whether they were as distracting to you. As someone who also went to film school, you might also have some thoughts about that approach and whether or not it was distracting or not. Because I am remaining pure so far. I have not read any other reviews because I'm kind of wanted to go into this conversation fresh without being tainted by that. But yeah, I might check out to see what the critical reception of this was, because I actually don't know. So as I am right now, I'm teetering on this movie. Like, I want to like it more than I do. I see that it has merits, but the distractions are so distracting, and I don't know if I can get past them. So Mank, it's on Netflix if you want to see it.
I guess now you have to watch the Trials of the Chicago 7 on Netflix. No?
I don't have to, but we'll see. I don't know.
I'll get around to Mank.
I feel like my my Aaron Sorkin tolerance has plummeted, so I don't know if I can do it, but we'll see.
Okay, so Mank, your mileage may vary.
Yeah, that's pretty much my review, is that I think it's going to depend wildly on your expectations. Also, if you've seen Citizen Kane or not, because if you haven't seen Citizen Kane, a lot of this movie will not work at all, because it's not only trying to tell the story of it, but it's also trying to emulate it in its narrative too. It bounces around between flashbacks and current day, just like Citizen Kane does. So if you're expecting a traditional film arc, you're not going to get it. So, yeah, it's interesting.
I don't want to say it's the Citizen Kane of Citizen Kane ripoffs, but is it the Citizen Kane ripoff of Citizen Kane?
It's the Citizen Kane of movies based on the writing of Citizen Kane. There. Anyway. Okay, now it's your turn to tell me the thing that up till its release, the internet couldn't shut up about. And now, miraculously, the internet totally shut up about. Tell me about all 4 hours of the Justice League Snyder Cut.
Let me tell you about my 10-hour journey of watching Justice League Snyder Cut. Because, well, no, shit. It wasn't 10 hours. 2.5, 5, 6, 7. 10. Yeah, it was 10 hours.
Okay.
So, a couple weeks ago, I mentioned that I had watched Justice League 2017. I have to differentiate now.
Right.
Just to familiarize with why it was so poorly received. And I was like, okay, there's 2.5 hours. I get it. I can see why it was perceived that way. And Joss Whedon had to come in and tinker with everything and bend to studios execs' will to make this work.
Yeah.
So when we reported that HBO Max was going to provide Zack Snyder with an extra $20 million to finish his work and provide his own vision for what would have been Justice League, you'd expect, the same 2.5 hour run probably because studio execs. But because going on HBO Max, they completely eliminated the need for any type of hard cap and just said, finish it however you want.
Yeah.
And with that, you get a 4-hour film.
So originally, when they first said they were going to get this, they were originally reported that they're going to split it into 4 parts, right? And then out of nowhere, right before this thing releases, they changed their mind on that. Why do you think that was?
So while you watch the film, it is split up into 6 different parts.
Okay.
So it does the thing that I don't like film doing, which I complained about last week on Cherry.
Last week, yes.
Last week's Cherry review was that it split it up into chapters. And it does that here, which, as I said, I really don't like it. It's really annoying. It's done so because it is a 4-hour film, and if you want to stop, you can. Go right back to it.
Gives you a nice break to go eat something and come back.
Or go to the restroom or do something else, because 4 hours is a long time to just sit there and watch it.
Yes, I would say, especially without some sort of intermission.
So the time on this is a problem for me because
it's an investment.
One, it's an investment. 2, it breaks that movie unspoken agreement movie quota between viewer and director, that I'm investing in this in the hour of a film, a normal film length time. I'm not mainly here for you to just sit there and babble on forever.
Well, Zack Snyder says, no, you're going to listen to me babble.
Zack Snyder says, but if I don't babble on, you won't get all this rich backstory and detail and character exposition that is needed for a satisfying conclusion.
Is it worth it though? Do you get a satisfying conclusion? Does he pack it full of important information, or is it 4 hours of a superhero movie?
He packs it full of important information because we didn't get that information in any prior films.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, if you took the Avengers film and you front loaded it with a bunch of Thor stuff, because Thor was never had its own film, and you didn't know anything about Thor or Loki or why they're there and their whole backstory, and it was front loaded with a bunch of Thor stuff before it got to any Avengers stuff, then you, or like sewn throughout and like told like backstories. It's kind of that same equivalent where we don't get any huge backstories on two of the major characters introduced into this film, which Joss Whedon had to do his best to to give you in 1 or 2 lines who they are, what they do, why they're important.
Yeah.
And kind of add his own flair of raising the stakes, which is to humanize them. It works for Marvel because the person isn't the superhero, it's the suit that makes them super. And that's what Marvel is kind of built their whole motif around, is that the human is the more important element, not the person, not the costume.
Yeah, the drama is always interpersonal. The drama is very rarely extra personal.
That doesn't quite qualify with Zack Snyder's partake.
Right, because the DC superheroes are more innately like they are superheroes. They are defined by their powers, more or less.
I mean, yes, even going back to Man of Steel, Zack Snyder established that this universe is, these are gods among men.
Right.
Even in Batman v Superman, that was heavily implied that these are gods and titans fighting amongst men.
I mean, this division,
they should be treated as such.
This division, I think, has been pretty much innate in the DC versus Marvel argument forever, right? Like I recall people of that generation in the 60s who grew up on these Marvel comics, they glommed onto them because they weren't DC, because they were telling more personal stories about the heroes. It was less about the big clash of big powers and more about, oh, this is a person just like me. Especially like heroes like Spider-Man. It's like, here's somebody relatable who's going through the relatable things. And that created a division. Obviously, of course, DC got better at telling those kind of stories as they went on, and the division became like less separate. But I think you're right. I think even the way that the film universes are portrayed still have that difference in them. It's still, that's the difference between the two franchises.
Right. And so you have these metaphorical and, I guess, Superman physical godlike beings clashing, and you would expect total annihilation and destruction around them, which was, as pointed out way back in 2012, 13, when Man of Steel came out, that there was a whole lot of destruction, and critics kind of panned it, like, why is there so much destruction? This doesn't need to be happening. Like, but it does, because these are superhuman meta beings that would cause godlike destruction around them.
Yeah.
Which then handicapped Zack Snyder with Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, because several points throughout that film, which I just rewatched because of this, they specifically point out in dialogue that, oh, that place is inhabited. Don't worry, downtown's cleared. No one's there anymore. There's no casualties involved. It's like,
as
they
if it was
specifically pointed out
job.
because it was such a draw from Man of Steel.
As if it was almost somebody's job, like in a continuity kind of way, to be like, oh, well, we got to make sure the audience doesn't think a bunch of innocent people just died.
Which is funny, because that is all Batman's arc in the beginning of that film and throughout it.
Right. That
Superman needs to be controlled and tamed. So here we go to Zack Snyder wrapping up that entire arc trilogy of movies, which he calls his trilogy in 5 movies. So we're only on 3 of 5, technically, as he wants to make it. Who knows if he's going to finish the other 2. We'll see. But
you can say
4 hours is a long investment.
Yeah.
considering that you compound it on the 3 hours from Batman v Superman, on top of the 2.5 hours from Man of Steel.
I mean, that's not to say that the Marvel movies aren't long too. They're each about two to 2.5 hours long, each of them, right?
Yes.
So they're also investments. But I think that when you're doubling that length, it's a whole new ballgame at that point.
Right. But then you wonder, can't you split it up like Marvel did with Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame? That's still one cohesive story.
Could you
split over 2 parts?
If that had happened prior to Justice League's release, the original one, do you think that Warner would have been more like open to the idea of releasing it in a 2-part way, sticking with Snyder's original version of the film? Or do you think that the way he does it, they're too enmeshed to separate?
There is a specific point, meaning being, I mean, it's not really spoilers because the film came out in 2017.
Right, exactly, yeah.
There is a specific halfway point where they do bring back Superman that you could have cut it.
Yeah.
Just he's back, and then you cut to black, and
that
then
would have been a good way to leave the
oh,
audience.
he's back. What's going to happen next? Are they going to get together? Who knows? Or you would end it with that fight where Superman beats up Justice League and then flies away, and then you're left wondering what happened to everything else. How are they going to come back from this? Because now you're not just fighting one villain.
Yeah.
Actually, Superman is now a villain too to the Justice League, so you're fighting 2 different villains.
But of course, this theory also assumes that the only reason why they canned Snyder's version of the film was because of its length, which I don't think is why. There's also the other half of what you were talking about, which is there had been so much bad press about those previous films that they probably wanted to get away from Snyder for that reason too. Bringing Joss Whedon in was probably an easy way for be like, hey, look, we got the guy you like from the other movie, from the other studio.
We got the Marvel guy. He can fix anything.
Right, exactly. And so I also think that they went that direction for those reasons too, which means that so maybe we wouldn't have never gotten any version of Snyder's version up until now.
I don't think so, because no, I think you're right though, because getting Warner Brothers as a studio would not and probably would never release a 4-hour theatrical cut to
no, God, no.
Because I mean, just for dollars alone, you can't have 4 hour. You'd only get maybe 3 showings, 4-hour film a day.
Yeah, the chains would freak out because they would have to do the thing that they did. Well, they do anyways for these bigger releases, which is just basically kick out everything else and only play this one movie. And that makes a lot of other studios very upset.
Right. So this thing could only exist in a streaming world.
Yeah.
Aside from it being cut up into 2 different parts.
Right.
Now, that's all the buildup just to get this movie here.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Does it pay off? Yes. But then again, it was always going to pay off because of the reshoots, because you had 3 years of critics just bashing it and video essays saying what went wrong. And so you had 3 years to tinker with everything and to fix whatever was going to be considered wrong in the first movie that you could fix for this definitive edition Snyder Cut.
Yeah, very few, just on paper, very few movies have the benefit of hindsight. This one has the benefit of hindsight, right? So you're always going to be able to look at something, a new version of the old thing, and be like, well, it's better than the old thing, because of course it is, because there's more of it. It's better, that allows it with like more freedom about time. So it allows it the freedom to kind of tackle some of the things directly that people complained about. So yeah, It has that benefit built in.
And because I'm watching this through movie lenses, cinematic film school lenses, I can see where, why, and how executives and editors got together and cut down what this 4-hour film is into the 3-hour film that Joss Whedon presented with us.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, movies are not comic books.
Right.
Yeah.
So adding all that stuff that they took out back in definitely does help, and I think it was always going to help.
Mm-hmm.
It just makes for a bad film.
Do you think it? Yeah, because my first thought about when they said that this was going to be available on HBO Max was, is anybody going to care about this except for the people who already cared? And I think that the answer to that question is still, yeah, that's it. It's a very niche thing, not only because of its length, but also because most people who saw Justice League didn't like it. So the only people who are going to care about a new version of Justice League are the people who were invested enough in Justice League to care about a version of Justice League. And that's probably a percentage of a percentage at that point. You're whittling down the amount of people that are interested in this thing with every little bit of information you learn about it in a way. And so, no, of course it's not going to be a good movie. That's not what it's trying to be, right? It's trying to be this.
Not.
Yeah, it's and it never was going to be. It's going to always be one thing, which is an apology for Justice League. That's all it's going to be.
Right. It's not a film, whereas it is an expression of a vision that was never going to be seen had things gone right.
Yeah.
By right, I mean had Zack
Right.
Snyder not had to leave because of his daughter.
So many things had to be different in the world for this movie to actually come out in its original form, and none of those were realistic.
I mean,
The
it's like
tragedy in his life, the
allow me
critical
to date
reception of his
myself
previous
here.
films. Yeah.
It's gonna be very similar to Blade Runner director's cut.
Yeah.
Where people liked Blade Runner and thought it was fine, and then director's cut came out and said, "Oh, you got to watch this. It makes everything a lot better." But if you didn't have any care or thought the first original film that they presented was meh, you're not going to care that there's a director's cut that's supposedly better because your mind's already been made up.
Yeah, except there's one critical difference to that, which is conversations 30 years from now, just like the conversations now of a Blade Runner, the tone will be very different, though. It won't be, oh, Blade Runner's great. Oh, have you seen the director's cut? It's even better. The conversation in 30 years about this will be, man, Justice League sucks. Well, have you seen the director's cut? It's like slightly better. It's going to be a different conversation.
So, yeah, me saying that it's not a film, but rather a vision is pretty apt because it's not the 2.5 hour film that you would expect to see.
Right.
Now, what it adds greatly. It enhanced everything. But at the same time, this stuff should have been presented, as I said, in a previous film. So you get those backstories immediately and you don't have to spend the extra chunk in there explaining how everyone came to be.
Yeah. The way you're describing it almost sounds like it's as if Marvel had presented a Marvel movie, but before the movie plot started, they had put all the shit that they have in that, what is that recap show that they have now, Marvel Legends?
The Marvel Legends?
Yeah, if they had put that content before the story started.
Or you put it within as flashbacks to get to where you are.
That's what it sounds like. Is that what more or less what this is?
More or less, except it's like the pivotal scene that makes them, and it kind of explains, like, as I mentioned that these are gods among men, it explains in further detail what they are technically gods of, with Cyborg going more in depth, being explained as the god of technology and can hack anything with a Wi-Fi IP address. The Flash being the god of speed and time and space, whatever.
God of running really fast.
Well, because he enters the Speed Force and he can go back in time if he runs really fast, really fast.
Speed Force?
It's a whole comic thing.
No. Okay, not going to go into it.
How Aquaman is the god of the sea.
Of the water, of talking to dolphins.
How Wonder Woman is the goddess of warriors.
Sure.
Being the best that Themyscira has to offer. And then Superman is just god above gods because he's Superman.
Because he's Superman.
And then there's Batman just trying to wrangle all of them together.
Right. God of humans, I guess. He's the best of the humans.
World's greatest detective.
Right, yeah, exactly. So I guess the only question, I guess we kind of covered most of this. The only question I can think of is, did you enjoy watching this?
Or
did it feel like homework?
I enjoyed it. I did think it did feel long. It did feel like 4 hours watching it.
Yeah.
And it does at times feel like all this is that it has traditional Zack Snyder slow-mo sequences, which when you either one take those out or play them at regular speed will severely cut your time in half.
Thank God.
But I think I enjoyed watching it. I think it does fit in the narrative of the story he was trying to tell way back with Man of Steel and the story he was trying to get through with Batman v Superman, if it wasn't like severely hampered from producers and Warner Brothers trying to say, you need to keep this under 3 hours because we will not play anything above it.
Yeah. Oh boy.
And then there's the aspect ratio.
Yeah, so my understanding about this, and correct me if I'm wrong.
You're wrong, but go ahead.
Is that it's supposed to replicate a aspect ratio of an IMAX screen.
Yes, it's 4:3 on purpose,
which means that it's
meant for IMAX.
That means on a television it looks like a square. It looks like 4:3, and so there's like a little thing at the beginning that says, "Hey, yeah, we know it's 4:3. It's supposed to be. Don't worry, kind of cool your jets."
It says that it's 4:3 because that's what Zyder's
Snack Zyder. Okay, from now on, we're only calling him that.
You know, Brewdree's left, and now I have to make a new one.
Oh, Snack Zyder is so good. There, write that down for the name of the
Snack Zyder
this week. Anyway, right, because it was his original vision, unquote, unquote. But that's only because I guess the bulk of the film is filmed with IMAX cameras. Was that true?
Yes.
Okay.
A bulk of it was filmed with IMAX cameras, which is why 4:3 is the preferred aspect ratio.
Yeah.
Now, when they do eventually re-release this to IMAX, will I go and see it?
All 4 hours of it? I doubt that you're going to see that.
I may.
That's the thing, is
if things align.
Its runtime, I think, prohibits it from theatrical release. I think you're going to see a very like a special Blu-ray, like 4K Blu-ray release of this, but I don't think you see theatrical presentations. That's my guess.
I think you see limited release like Fandom,
maybe,
or Fandango kind of thing, where it's
Fathom
like
event.
these weekends only on IMAX only, not traditional screens.
Hey, remember the Fathom event? That feels that feels ancient now.
Yep, Fathom events.
Come back, maybe, unless that company went under. Who can say?
Warner Brothers exclusive IMAX events.
Yeah. If you work at Fathom events, give us a holler. mediaboatpodcast@gmail.com.
Anyways, yeah, I don't see this being a theatrical thing. It's like I said, I'll keep saying it. This is not a movie. It's a vision.
No. It's a vision.
And would I like to see more of this? Yes.
Where do they go from here? Do you think? Where do they go from here? Do you think further DC films will use any of the stuff introduced exclusively in this cut of the film?
We're at a weird point.
Yeah, because I feel like this is a divergence point, right? Is you either use the Whedon cut as canon or you don't, right?
Well, you have the Whedon cut. You have the Snyder cut. You have the new Batman coming out with Robert Pattinson.
And I remember
you have the Aquaman. We just had Wonder Woman 1984.
Again,
you have Aquaman 2 coming out. There's supposedly a Cyborg and Flash film in the works.
So
all of this is on the side, forefront of film from the DC CW universe.
Right. So question, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I vaguely remember us reporting a story where somebody in the Warner management said something, made some sort of statement along the lines of, we don't really care about film continuity and there isn't necessarily one universe. So what we're talking about maybe doesn't matter, because maybe the reason why they have so many disparate universes is because they don't give a shit.
What you're talking about is a crisis.
Yeah.
A crisis on infinite Earths.
Hey, I've heard
Every
that from
Earth
somewhere before.
it is possible, including, and we have to mention this because I just saw it.
Yeah.
The Shazam Battle Among Gods and the Dwayne Johnson Black Adam film as well.
Yeah, no, I think the real answer to this is you're right, is that answer, which is it's comic books. They'll figure out a way to make it make sense, even if it makes no sense at all, because that's the way these things work. You can literally have all of these universes combined without having to explain yourself because you're based on a comic book. It's the thing that Marvel can do, but they're very careful not to do.
The multiverse.
Where even when fans start guessing about multiverses, they put a kibosh on that. Spoiler alert, but if you listen to our podcasts about WandaVision, you already knew that spoiler.
Yes.
Anyway, but yeah, it seems like there's, speaking of being diametrically opposed on just the vision for their universes, that's another big difference, right? Marvel cares so much about canon, and DC just is like, I don't know, we have 3 Batman now.
Well, there's also the Birds of Prey, which came out last year.
Yeah. Yeah, there's too many. There's too many. How many? So we have at least two Batmen currently. We have at least 3 Jokers currently. We have 2 Supermen now from that new Superman and Lois show.
Don't forget, there is the upcoming, I'm not sure if it's this Batman or a different Batman, but a potential Batman Beyond film, where not Michael Keaton is supposed to reprise his role as Batman.
As adult Batman, right.
Yes.
Yeah,
so there's that Batman in this somewhere as well.
It's too complicated, and technically we're going on a tangent here. So any last thoughts about the Snyder Cut before we move on?
I enjoyed it. I suggest watching it if you're into that universe. Otherwise, it's a 4 hours of comic booky action.
It's an investment, and that you maybe won't pay off for you unless you're a very specific kind of person.
Right. Yeah. Does the thing that is added to this to make this 4 hours film worth it? Is the changes that Zack Snyder had worth it?
Maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you're invested.
Yeah.
If you didn't care in the first place, you're not going to care now.
This is not going to create new care for you.
Right.
Good to know. So yeah, just a pair of not necessarily Media Boat recommends, but I guess Media Boat watch with asterisks, I guess, this week.
Up to your mileage may vary.
Mm-hmm. Big your mileage may vary week. Mm-hmm. But what your mileage will not vary on is
Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Well, okay, real quick. I will briefly talk about this because I got a bone to pick with this thing.
Okay.
So yeah, I guess they're doubling down on this them doing a 10-year anniversary re-release of Scott Pilgrim in Dolby Cinema, but only in theaters and only for a week.
And only in Dolby Atmos, meaning AMC only.
And in April.
April 30th, like that weekend of April 30th.
I don't know.
I think it's for a week.
So yeah, I get why they wanted to wait until they thought that at least more people could see this, but I still think who's biting to see this? I know it's a new version of a film that a lot of people still love, but who's going to want to go to a movie theater?
Is now a bad time to tell you I bought you a ticket?
Yes, it's a terrible time. I feel like in an alternate universe when vaccinations were quicker, when states didn't just completely fold under restrictions like freaking Texas and Arizona, maybe I would be rosier about this, but we are not in shape for a limited engagement that's only going to be a week long. I just think it's bad timing. That I understand that they probably couldn't, for a similar reason as what you were saying about Disney and Black Widow. They probably couldn't push this back too much further because they would miss that 10-year window. But still, I'm not thrilled about.
That's okay. If you don't want to go to a movie, it will be coming out on Blu-ray 4K.
Yeah, and I still have my original Blu-ray of it, and that picture looks fine. So I don't know. I'm still okay with. I don't necessarily need this in my life yet. But.
All right, but what we need to do is move on.
Yes, which was what I was trying to do, but
sorry.
Okay, it's okay. No, I don't blame you. I blame
Zack Snyder.
I blame Edgar Wright. Anyways,
you blame Snack Zyder.
Delicious. He's tasty with that little dip. Moving on. Let's talk about television. We always start television with the sports corner. We have quite a lot of sports to talk about this week.
NFL struck a deal, a new broadcasting deal.
Yes. So our first story is actually a follow-up of sorts. We talked about how ESPN made their big hockey deal last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever that was.
2 weeks.
And this week we have a new deal that they penned, as you said, with the NFL. Disney/ESPN has reached a $2.7 billion /10-year deal, so for 10 years total. With the
That's
NFL,
$2.7 billion per year for 10 years.
Whew. With the NFL to stream one exclusive national NFL game annually, beginning with the 2022 season. That seems like a lot of money for one game a year, but hey.
But hey, there's more.
The 2023 season will see an annual divisional playoff game, a 33% increase in regular season games, going up to 23 per season, and Monday Night Football will add flex scheduling for Week 12 and beyond. They will also make part of the deal is also hosting 2 future Super Bowl games, the 2026 and the 2030 games. So this seems like a long game. This is a Hail Mary pass of a deal, not necessarily a short run for a few yards.
I think the winner here is one, the increase in games to 23 per season, and the Monday Night Football flex.
Right.
Because Monday Night Football used to be a thing. It used to be an event. It used to be two heavy hitters. But since they pre-schedule it from the beginning, you can't have the divisional rivals going up against each other for the final playoff spot towards the end of the season, Week 12 and beyond.
Yeah.
That is a huge investment that they got because flex scheduling is big. They do it for the end of the season for night games, for NBC Sunday Night Football. About time they did it for Monday Night Football as well.
I think this is further proof that Disney, even though they were hemorrhaging money in the parks department over the course of last year and laying a lot of people off, they still have money to burn, because that's the secret about Disney. They're not at all in need of money. It's just that they're being super, super picky about how they spend it. And here it's shown that they want to invest in sports, because if anything, the last year has proven it's that people love their sports so much that they will yell at you until you bring them back.
People will have cable just to watch the sports, which we're looking to in a minute here.
Yeah, case in point. And so it's the amount of money that they're willing to spend on very limited NFL games is very telling with how big of an audience that's going to bring in.
I think this is also a way to bolster ESPN Plus and try and make ESPN in general the place to go to for sports.
All sports.
It used to be that way in the 90s. You'd have to get ESPN to get sports. But now there's so many other competitors that they need to do something to up their game, and getting exclusive rights is the way to do that now.
They're getting the wide world back together.
Yes.
All right. Speaking of NFL deals, they're not the only one who made a deal with the league, because Amazon Prime also got into the game. They're getting exclusive rights to Thursday Night Football for 10 years. So I need to ask you a question about this. They took it from Fox. Yeah, I was going to say, the question I have about this is exclusive. Does that mean the only way of seeing Thursday night games will be on Amazon Prime? Because for a while, there was a dual deal happening where one of the networks had the TV presentation for some of the games, but other of the games you couldn't get on there. Is that the case here, or?
So specifically with Thursday Night Football, I think for the past 2 years, it was CBS for the first half,
yeah,
Fox for the second half. Before that deal, it was just Fox Thursday Night Football. However, even though if it was either if it was on Fox or CBS for Thursday Night Football, you could still watch it on the NFL Network Thursday Night Football live.
Right.
It's unclear if that will still work here for the next 10 years.
I guess that's what I'm asking. Yeah.
But if you want to watch a Thursday Night Football game, you have to watch it via Amazon Prime. Until we figure out if it's available on NFL Network.
Yeah, until we see otherwise, it could be the case. I don't know.
It could be the case.
It's an interesting deal. I mean, the Thursday games, I feel like it's always felt like an also ran compared to the Monday and Sundays. But as you're saying, even Monday night has lost its luster. So I'm not surprised that these companies are making a deal to get any NFL games they can.
Thursday night, it usually involves the Color Rush uniforms.
Yes. Oh, your favorite.
Yeah. The Christmas game and the ketchup and mustard game.
Ketchup and mustard, my favorite. All right. Speaking of football, our last before we move on to other sports, the NFL draft will be held April 29th to May 1st in downtown Cleveland around First Energy Stadium, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and the Great Lakes Science Center. So get ready for draft.
Trivia, which Great Lake are they talking about?
I don't know. You tell me.
Lake Erie.
Erie. So look for a spooky draft.
Or look across and see Canada on the other side.
Yeah.
And lastly, in NFL news, there is, as we previously reported, there will be no official pro day. But this week and next week, schools are doing their own pro days.
Okay.
So it's school specific. They're not sending everyone to Indianapolis to have pro day like they used to.
Right. Makes sense. Moving on to the madness in March. It's still happening. So far,
people were getting mad.
Oh, yeah. Madness all over. The NCAA tournament currently, here's our headlines for you. VCU forfeits.
Because of coronavirus.
Not surprised. Oral Roberts, one of my favorite names for any of the schools, tops the Ohio State.
Yes, the Ohio State was number 2. Oral Roberts was ranked 15th.
Yeah.
So that was the big upset that broke literally all the brackets.
Yeah. But that's not the only team that they bested. Is that how I'm supposed to read this?
No. So other upsets this week include Ohio, Northwestern, or Ohio Abilene Christian, and Northwestern. All 4 of them were seeded 12 or higher, and all 4 of them made it into the second round. The most has happened since the NCAA tournament.
Dang. Then you also have something here that says women's weight room. Can you explain?
Oh, are you not up to date on the women's weight room scale?
I guess I don't follow enough people who care about March Madness.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
All right. So skip whatever I had written down because that's just going to be our story. Okay. I'm calling audible here.
No, that's a different sport.
That's a different sport. All right. So this is big because this is going to be our story. Okay.
Okay. Well, do we want to wrap up sports first?
Yeah, let's wrap up sports real quick.
Okay, so real quick. Meanwhile, in professional basketball, the NBA is currently seeking a $75 billion over 9-year package for their broadcasting rights. So soon we'll have a deal to talk about with a broadcaster about basketball's future. So look forward to that. And then for you race fans, NASCAR will have its first Cup Series dirt race since 1970 in Bristol, Tennessee.
And that race is on Sunday. And that Bristol track is a half-mile track. It's a short track. And it's just all dirt.
All dirt.
They brought in dirt specifically to have a dirt race.
Yeah. Okay, so now tell me about what's happening with weight rooms.
Okay, so Title IX says that any athletic association with dealing with women's athletics specifically, must have some equal representation to that of the men's athletics.
Okay.
NCAA puts on a tournament basketball where they bring in all these teams from different schools together in a type of bubble to host their tournament. This is nothing new.
Yeah.
What is different is that the men's weight room looks like an Olympic-sized weight room where they took out a whole convention center, basically, and had racks and racks of weights, of exercise equipment, of full court basketballs, just a lot of stuff that you would expect for an NCAA D1 put on type of event, to keep these athletes in finely tuned athletic machine class. At the same time, as we reported last week, that the men's is going on, the women's happens as well. What the women got for their weight room was one rack of dumbbell weights and 12 yoga mats.
That's it?
That's it.
Eee.
That was their weight room. And because this happened like on the first day that they got in, it blew up.
How did people find out? Did stuff get posted on social media?
TikTok.
Okay,
TikTok that went to Twitter, that started the hashtag and hashtag women's weight room. And just NCAA just got put on blast that this is how they treat their women's sports.
How are they going to do anything about it?
Not only that, not only for their weight room, but they also got put on blast for their gift bags, which were half of what an count of what the men got.
Yikes.
And the food, which for the women included a just boxed food, which looks terrible. Whereas the men got what some would call a buffet style of arrangement of different foods to choose from.
Oh boy.
So naturally, they got put on blast, and the NCAA quickly and swiftly tried to rectify this by providing them with an actual weight room of materials to work with, and better food. No word yet that I saw of on the gift bags and kind of the NCAA swag, but the damage had already been done. Because once a picture goes out on social media, that's all people will see. That's all people will remember.
And it's one school. Who knows what the other schools in the organization would be like?
No, it wasn't one school.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that as soon as one goes out, it's going to just everybody's going to be talking about their school's setup.
Right. Yeah. And so people were, and the athletes were talking about on social media their experiences, what they've experienced, and the clear discrepancy between women's and men's basketball.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the things that's always been the case and just has been underreported, probably. I mean, it's probably a conversation to be had in these conversations that are happening right now about how the NCAA treats its students at all, right? They're student athletes. And I think that it's part and parcel with that conversation. It's just
it's more so because they had to physically build all of these weight rooms from scratch, and it's not like, hey, you're staying at this hotel, the local school, college is across the street or on campus. You can go there and use their weight room when you want to. They had to physically build these because of coronavirus.
Right. So it's even more complicated. Oh boy, it's rough.
But not only that, people were going to the defense of the NCAA, saying that, well, the women don't bring in money, so they why does it matter? That the men bring in $1 billion, whereas the women bring in 35 million, and therefore they should get the better treatment because they bring more money for the NCAA and for colleges.
And of course, the answer to that is well, that means that we need to actually look at the big picture of how the NCAA does business, and like, why is that the case? Like, why is there so much money involved in this process? Because it's not just about like, oh, whoever gets the revenue should be treated better. It's like, no, are we still having a discussion about revenue when the students are being so shafted in all ways possible?
Well, one, the students aren't getting paid.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
The amateurism.
Right.
2, there should be some type of national collegiate athletic association to make sure that something like this doesn't happen, that men and women's sports are seen as equals.
Right. It's like if they were doing their job, this would not be the case. You're right. It's a mess. The NCAA is a total mess, is basically the big picture here.
Yes, I will point out that a lot of people were pointing at Title IX saying that there shouldn't be discrepancies. So we'd actually maybe do some research into what Title IX says. Mm-hmm. And it's anything that is federally funded can't be disparaged based on gender.
Right. So,
but this is the NCAA tournament, which they put on. So technically it falls outside of that jurisdiction.
But I think that what it does is, though, it gives a good guideline about what you should be doing in a moral organization. I think that's the thing. So that argument does not necessarily like hold water, because if you're in an organization that has such a big national stage, you should also be adhering to the same rules.
Right, but like I said, if you're the governing body for collegiate athletes, then you should want to see, not just women, but all sports get a fair shot and be treated as equals.
Yep. Oh boy. Yeah, there's a lot in there.
Yeah. Yes, I will state here that men's football and men's basketball bring in the bulk of revenue for collegiate sports. That being said, like we saw last year when schools started shutting down sports because they couldn't fund them, it's up to a bigger body of athletic association to make sure that these sports are funded and that the money, which is supposed to come from a nonprofit institution, gets properly funded to the athletes.
Yeah, it's going to take a huge change in the way that they operate for these things to get solved in the long run. And I hope that they get started because there's a lot of issues.
So mark this down for another L for NCAA.
For sure.
Which we continuously cover into the terrible organization that they are.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yep.
Okay, with that done, I'm going to roll your other story that we skipped here into the bits. I'm just going to do a really fast lightning round here. Yeah. So first up, we have television bits for you. And first up in the bits is what was originally your first story here. Writers Guild of America has hosted its awards for writing from the past year. Screenplay winners include Promising Young Woman for original screenplay, Borat 2 for adapted, and The Dissident for documentary. Winners for their television categories include The Crown for drama, Ted Lasso for comedy and new series, hell yeah. Mrs. America, did I skip? No, I didn't skip a line. No. Mrs. America for original, I guess, script in general.
Yes.
The Queen's Gambit for adapted script, and #Free Rayshawn for short form.
That will be Quibi's last award, I promise.
We'll see, right? Desus and Mero won for Variety Talk Series, and Stephen Colbert's Election Night 2020 special won for Variety Special. And meanwhile, for game shows, Weakest Link won for Quiz Show category. So congratulations to the WGA winners.
Congratulations on your awards. Yeah. Now, let's talk about the bad side for WGA, or actually the good side. This is good for WGA.
Yeah, it's good. 9 writers have gone on strike against the show The Chase, citing refusal to abide by some of the terms of the collective bargaining agreement that covers the show. So yeah, solidarity to those writers and hope that they get their terms.
This is WGA East, but still Writers Guild in general.
Yeah. And
so if they're not meeting your conditions, this is what guilds are for. This is what unions are for.
This is when you go on strike.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Jay Leno is in the news this week for apologizing for jokes in his history of being a comedian, and I guess specifically on his late night program that targeted Asian communities. He said, quote, "Too many times I side with screw them if they can't take a joke, even when in my heart I knew it was wrong." I'm divided on this. I feel like it's a little too late, Jay Leno.
He has been on TV for 10 years plus.
Right. But at the same time, though, if you look back, these jokes were commonplace pretty much in every kind of comedy that you had. It wasn't just Jay Leno. It's just that comedy was in a very different place in that era. And it's taken way, way too long for us to move away from those kinds of jokes about all sorts of people, but especially Asian Americans and Black Americans. So I don't know, we're getting there, baby steps. But yeah, comedy was a dark place in the aughts, let me tell you.
It'll be a big step when Jay Leno comes out for his jokes against Monica Lewinsky on a nightly basis.
Yeah, no, he has a lot of apologies to make, I think, is the bottom line there. Anyway. Meanwhile, Issa Rae has inked a $40 million 5-year deal for film and TV with Warner Media, giving HBO, HBO Max, and Warner Brothers exclusive rights and first look deals. She has been signed with Warner since back in 2016, and I guess is successful enough for them to keep her on board.
She signed in 2016 for 2 years, renewed it in 2018 for 3 years, and here she is, 2021, renewed for 8 years. That is some good job security.
Keep rolling with it, yeah. She seems to be doing good work over there. Meanwhile, on Fox, The Simpsons passed another milestone, 700 episodes in the books for The Simpsons. And as we noted a couple episodes ago, they've been renewed for 2 more seasons, so it just keeps on going.
Yep, just pointing out that 700 have officially aired. Mm-hmm. They did the thing this past week where they had to recorrect their timeline to how old they are.
Right, they're constantly having to move the dial back. So now I think that Homer had like a 90s rap phase. I only saw like screenshots of this episode. So
this was supposedly take place in like the late aughts because Uber was there.
Oh, my brain hurts. Yeah, I have not gone to some more recent episodes of that show, but hey, they got to do what they got to do to keep it going, I guess.
Yep.
And lastly, in the bits for television here, Roku has added all sorts of episodes, 1,500 to be specific, of This Old House, starring Bob Vila, so to its catalog of weird odds and ends on their network. Or not network, they're like collection of weird clips.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to watch, just zone out to clips of This Old House and fall asleep to Bob Vila's dulcet tones, now you can.
This also applies to any current season where it will air first on PBS and then the next day air on Roku or be available on Roku.
I guess if your grandmother tells you about Roku, you can direct her towards this.
Or you can give your grandma a Roku for her birthday or Christmas and like, here, now you have all this access to streaming.
This is the Bob Ross channel, and this is the This Old House channel. Anyway.
All that's missing is Antiques Roadshow.
I'm sure that'll happen at some point.
Sure it will.
All right, let's move on to television thoughts. We just got a couple this week. One a big one, and one we talked about last week, I guess, a little bit.
And both of these will be quick because they're incomplete.
Well, yeah, the thing about whenever we talk about the beginning of something is that we keep the big discussion for the end. So I watched one of these. Can you guess which one? The answer may surprise you.
I'm guessing it's the Falcon and the Winter Soldier because it's available on Plus.
Yeah, I did. So, so this is the next big Marvel show on Disney Plus following WandaVision. We talked pretty positively about WandaVision. We thought overall it was a successful try at a television format for the Marvel stories. And it had a unique gimmick that kind of kept it interesting for the bulk of it to people who may not be interested in the Marvel mythos overall. This is the opposite of that.
Tonal whiplash.
Yeah, this is right from the beginning. You have to, know and be caught up with where everybody is in the Marvel timeline right now. And two, you have to be invested in the characters in order to care about anything that's happening here. They do a little bit of emotional work to be like, oh, but look at these personal problems and struggles that these people are going through. But then it reminds you by the end of the episode, oh, but that's not really what this is about. This is really about the superhero angle and being an action show. And if that's what you want, you're going to be happy. And if that's not what you want, well, them's the breaks. And that's Falcon and the Winter Soldier for me, at least.
So Anthony and Joe and Anthony Russo of the Russo brothers kind of made their claim to fame with Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
The Winter Soldier.
The Winter Soldier. Yeah, Captain America, the Winter Soldier, Captain America, Civil War, and then Avengers, Endgame, and Infinity War. So there's a specific style that they've kind of nailed for Captain America, and that's what this is.
This is that.
If you like those Captain America movies and the style of Joe and Anthony Russo, it's this style in TV format.
Yeah.
What you can claim they did with Community or Arrested Development, but those don't have the Marvel budget action sequences that this has.
This is the thing that everybody who was disappointed by WandaVision because it didn't have enough action. This is the show that they wanted.
Yes.
Right from the beginning of this thing, you get a huge action set piece. You get all of the military porn you could ask for, for better or for worse. And and you get that like pseudo patriotism.
Were you not aroused by the talk of Syrian airspace?
No, not at all. From minute one of this thing, I was like, oh boy, they're going to have to hard sell me on this for me to watch more than this episode. Because this is just not the kind of thing, Marvel Entertainment, that I personally want. For instance, I had missed Winter Soldier when it came out and didn't see it until a few years later. And when I did finally watch it, I was bored out of my mind at that movie. I didn't like it. And people still to this day are like, oh, that's one of the best Marvel movies. It's just not for me. That kind of military espionage drama does very little for me. The Marvel
This is why I always say Guardians of the Galaxy is my favorite film.
Exactly. The Marvel movies that actually had like a sense of humor and like an emotional tinge to them work better for me. Mm-hmm. Like I like the Guardians movies. I liked Thor Ragnarok. I like Black Panther. And when you lose that and gotta go really to that, what I was gonna kind of go on a tangent on, which is that pseudo patriotism thing, I'm like, you're losing me, guys. You're losing my like patience. And this I feel like is gonna be 9 episodes of it.
Yeah, it is only gonna be 9 episodes, so we'll talk about this in 8 weeks.
What do you think though? Because I feel like you're more in line with the expected audience for this thing.
I liked it, but I also like that it's not the same as WandaVision. You're not going to get here's the breakdown of every episode because everything has a hidden meaning and it's like a Twilight Zone episode puzzle that you're trying to finish.
Yeah.
No, it's the sit back, we're going to throw a bunch of stuff at you and it will all be wrapped up in the end. Mm-hmm. You just need to sit back and watch it.
Yeah.
So in that case, yes, I like that it's more of a relaxed version of a Marvel film.
Yeah, right. With a bigger, wider, serialized storyline that they're going to have a lot more time to discuss things. Mm-hmm. And maybe that will give them more time for those character moments. There are hints in this episode that they are going to spend some quality time with the characters and get to know them. I mean, one of the characters is straight up in therapy in this thing. And so that's the vibe that at least they want you to like, at least has some of, like takes up some space in the narrative, is that they're allowing some character development to happen here, but still giving you all those action set pieces.
It may be the first episode, but I am waiting for when these two characters, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, appear on screen at the same time.
It'll happen because it's even in the trailers they've been showing is that they are going to meet in person. It's going to be a buddy thing. I only know that because one of the genres on Disney Plus for this is buddy, and I was like, "That's funny."
Could have fooled me with that first episode.
Yeah, not at all. It's gonna be a work in progress. We'll report back when you finish this thing, because like I said, I'm probably out. WandaVision kept me with the gimmick, and I don't know if this one has enough for me to stick around. So,
and it's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
So
that's so perfectly fine as the other thing you watch, or at least the person at the heart of it.
yes, so I have vocally, longtime listeners of the show will know my disdain, my uneasiness
Uh-huh.
with celebrating anything that has to deal with Demi Lovato.
It's, I think
It's a rough course.
There are things that I think can be celebrated about Demi Lovato. I think that she's gone through some harsh times and has triumphed over them, maybe temporarily sometimes, but still, that's still some sort of triumph, I think, that you can chalk up
Yes,
for
and then
her
in 2018, when she OD'd again, just
Yeah.
lost all that goodwill that she built up for 6 years or whatever.
I think, well, okay. When you talk about addiction, there's a really tough tightrope walk to walk, and it is that addiction is a disorder. It is not something that necessarily somebody always does to themselves. It's not always earned, I guess you could say, for lack of a better term. It's not A to B, right? It's a more complex thing. It's like alcoholism is the same thing, where addiction is a complicated beast that it should be viewed as a health problem and not necessarily a personal responsibility thing, because there are so many other additional layers to it, right? There's, of course, you have to keep in mind the accessibility of these drugs, the lack of government response to actually have these health solutions available to addicts, having these things locked up in the U.S. health system to people who can't afford it, for example. It's such a big beast that's very hard for me, and I don't think that people should immediately say all the blame and onus goes on the addict, because that's not the whole picture. So I think when you're talking about somebody who is in the line, like in the spotlight, like Demi, it's very easy to fall into that trap and just be like, oh, well, it's just a story of another celebrity who burned out. It's more complex. So I don't want to necessarily go as far to be like, well, she's just the worst and she's irredeemable at this point. But it's very, very true. And I think what you're getting at here is that she's very, very complicated. And to talk about her is to walk a minefield, because it's so complex.
And it's so complex that you essentially just nailed the exact vibe that this documentary is going for.
Yeah, and that's kind of the vibe I got from the teasers they've been showing, which is very much like she's going to tell you the honest truth. And that's going to be hard to hear sometimes.
So the full title is Demi Lovato, Dancing with the Devil.
Mm-hmm.
And this chronicles unreleased documentary footage that she was putting together from her tour leading up to and prior to, including the day of her OD in 2018. Mm-hmm. It goes into that. And then this is her documentary explaining what happened since then, unreleased footage from that documentary, and kind of how she fell into that spot, how she is, and kind of the redemption arc that she wants to put herself on, that she knows she messed up. She goes into in a very uncensored and unapologetic way, not just with her, but with her friends at the time, with everyone she was close to, best friends, people who were around her, family members as well. It's a very hard look at that addiction and at that fall for her from YouTube.
Yeah, out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So after kind of in the wake of seeing these other documentaries about similar age group young women who are in the limelight, that includes the most recent one with Billie Eilish, includes Miss Americana with Taylor Swift, includes the Framing Britney Spears documentary short. In kind of the wake of that, how do you think that this compares? Is this almost like the dark side of that story? Like when things go the ultimate wrong, is this maybe an example of that?
This falls more in line with that Britney Spears documentary, where it's not all happy sunshine. It's here's what happened. Here's my take on it. Here are the questions. Here are the answers that you wanted here are the answers to the questions you keep asking me. And then on the side to all the other external interviews, it's here's their take on how they now feel about Demi being 2 years removed from the incident. It's only 2 episodes right now. You can watch them on Demi Lovato's actual channel.
Okay.
But it's a 6-part documentary. They'll be rolled out through YouTube on, I assume, now a weekly basis. The next one's not supposed to air until next week. So
okay. Yeah.
We'll get there.
Friend of the show, Christy, has also watched this first 2 parts. She plans on finishing it as well. Maybe I can try to get her on the show to talk about it. But yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I'm interested to see where it goes. I'll maybe, if I have time, try to check it out, but we'll see.
Yep.
All right. Any other things that we want to talk about with television?
No, because we got to keep moving on.
Got to keep moving. So let's move on into cancellations and renewals. You didn't say it.
Well, what am I no longer watching?
Thank you. First up, Sci-Fi is renewing Resident Alien, the show that you just talked about last week.
Which I kept saying was on TBS, but I guess it's on Sci-Fi.
Wrong, I guess. For a second season.
It's on Peacock as well, if you want to watch it there.
So there you go. But the CW has canceled Burden of Truth after 4 seasons, so no more of that. Speaking of Peacock,
4th season has been shot. It will just air eventually. No timeline for it.
No schedule. Okay. Peacock has renewed the Amber Ruffin show for another season. Then you have
6 months, 6 more months. We'll take it through the end of the year.
Got it. Okay. Congratulations to her. NBC is renewing Mr. Mayor after a little bit of a COVID break for that show for its 2nd season. And FX is bringing back Snowfall for a 5th season. Next up, deaths. We have quite a few this week, so let's get through them here. First up, Dick Hoyt, age 80, a marathon and triathlon runner. Next up.
Yeah, so this is kind of a special one. Real Sports had done a documentary on them or spotlighted them 3 different times. Dick Hoyt's son is paralyzed.
Oh, okay.
He has cerebral palsy.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to keep his son active and motivated, Dick Hoyt and his son run these marathons. Dick Hoyt pushes his son and pulls them and rides with them through these marathon and triathlons. And it's an amazing story. Definitely, if you're into any heartwarming sports stories, look into this Dick Hoyt and Team Hoyt.
Okay.
Like, I'm kind of welling up thinking about it. It's a very powerful story of a father and son who overcome tremendous odds.
Well, I guess condolences to his family, and I hope his son continues to succeed. Next up, W. Kent Taylor, age 65, founder / CEO of Texas Roadhouse. That's not really in our purview, but sure.
Delicious.
Next up, Barry Orton, age 62, a professional wrestler in the WWF, ICW, and Stampede Wrestling.
The uncle of current WWE champion Randy Orton.
Makes sense. Next up, Elgin Baylor, age 86, Hall of Fame basketball player for Minneapolis / LA Lakers. Was there for the transfer, I guess.
Yes.
Coach of the New Orleans Jazz and executive for the LA Clippers. So lifer in the National Basketball League.
Right. Note that is coach for the New Orleans Jazz before they moved to Utah and before the Pelicans came in.
All over the place. And then lastly, George Siegel, age 87, actor Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, Just Shoot Me, The Goldbergs, and A Touch of Class. I think most recently people know him from The Goldbergs.
Yes, he was the grandpa in The Goldbergs. They just wrapped season 8, so assume season 9 will open with his death.
Yeah. So that will do it for the deaths. So we'll flip this over to you and we'll talk about some music, why don't we?
All right, well, we start music with the Billboard, and we start the Billboard with the Hot 100. And the hottest song in the land right now is Pixar's Up. I'm sorry, that's Cardi B's Up.
Finally dethroning Olivia Rodrigo's driver's license from #1.
That was dethroned last week.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Because Drake's 3
right.
songs.
I forgot about the Drake week because it was a weird week.
Yep. At number 2, Leave the Door Open by Silk Sonic.
Okay.
At 3, Driver's License by Olivia Rodrigo. At 4, What's Next by Drake. And at 5, Save Your Tears by The Weeknd. As for your albums chart, your Billboard 200, your #1 album, and reigning champion, still the #1 album of the week, Dangerous, the double album by Morgan Wallen.
Unfortunately, this sets a record. We will get to that in the music bits in a moment.
I'll just tell you right now, it's 10 weeks. Yeah. 10 weeks at #1, third record to do so. And we can move on from it.
Yeah.
Please, someone put on an album to move on from it.
Please.
At number 2, Shoot for the Stars, Aim for the Moon by Pop Smoke. At 3, getting the Grammy bump, Future Nostalgia by Dua Lipa. At 4, not getting the Grammy bump, After Hours by The Weeknd. And rounding out your top 5, when it's all said and done, ... Take Time by Giveon.
Yeah. I was just going to say what you were just going to say.
If you didn't like any of those albums, we have new releases.
Hey, good. Go for it.
Say it.
What am I listening to this week?
I don't know what you're listening to, but here are the new releases.
All right.
Cherry, not the film, not the Maraschino. Album, not Buck Cherry. Cherry by Anna Fox Rachinsky.
She was the lead singer of indie band Quilt. This is her first solo record.
Okay. We also have Is For Lovers by Death from Above, 1979. The Bitter Truth by Evanescence. Yes, that Evanescence. Who by Fire by First Aid Kit. Promises by Floating Points and Pharaoh Sanders. Deacon by Serpent with Feet. Green to Gold by The Antlers. And lastly, Sketchy by Tune Yards. With some funky spelling.
Yes. Imagine typing that.
Well, we're really running out of time here, so we got music.
Good thing that we got bits.
First up in the bits, the National Registry adds Nas's Illmatic and Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation 1814 and Kermit the Frog's Over the Rainbow.
I didn't have space for all of them, but those were the 2 big records that were added to the National Registry.
Sorry, not Over the Rainbow, Rainbow Connection.
Rainbow Connection is what you're thinking. So in case you don't know, just real quick, National Registry adds whatever they deem like culturally important to American culture every year, and new media is added. So this was this year's Year in Music.
We also had Taylor Swift dropping a new Fearless version, Track You All Over Me tomorrow.
Yes, that drops tomorrow.
I'm sorry, the track is called You All Over Me.
You All Over Me. So
which
that will
debut tomorrow.
Tomorrow on Thursday. The only notable thing about this is it seems to be produced by her, by Aaron Dessner, her Folklore and Evermore collaborator. So it looks like because they are not on the previous record, she's using some of that leeway to do completely new versions of those unreleased songs, as opposed to the album versions, which will be closer to their original form. So interesting.
Okay. We also have an indie label secretly Group Union launches Union.
Called the Secretly Group, and they're launching a union.
Yes. Union for music group, which includes labels Secretly Canadian, Jaguar, Dead Oceans, and Ghostly International.
Yeah, if you're familiar at all with some indie labels, these are really popular labels with a lot of artists on them. For example, Dead Oceans is where Phoebe Bridgers is signed. And this is cool because unionized labels are going to be able to help their artists more and more as it get more difficult to kind of find work and touring. So this is only good. The more unions in music, the better.
Yep, because as we mentioned, unions
Yeah.
will get you better pay.
Yes, they help,
And
it turns
yeah.
out.
Andrew Lloyd Webber, Gregorio Giorgio Moroder, and others signed an open letter asking for more pay for songwriters.
Yeah, they're among a lot of signees for this thing. But yeah, it's for the songwriters, basically for songwriters to be credited more and earn more money for their writing. So
I feel like we went through this 2 years ago.
We did.
So clearly nothing has happened since.
Yeah.
Speaking of things that haven't happened since, Amoeba Music will be opening a new Hollywood location on April 1st. This is not a joke.
Yeah, this is a follow-up to our previous story about them shutting down the popular Sunset Strip store. They announced at that point that eventually they would move that store's location to a different place in Hollywood, and this is that new store.
Yep. Tencent and Warner Media will be launching a joint
label. Should be joint
label in China. Note, this is specifically for China.
Right. Yes.
And lastly, in a more personal news,
this affects you.
This affects me personally, actually, because I talked about it earlier this week.
Yes.
Kenny Chesney will move his 2021 stadium tour, which is supposed to be 2020 stadium tour, to 2022.
Yeah.
Because the only way you get Kenny Chesney and all those artists to appear is if you pack a stadium, and you can't do that yet at 25% capacity.
Indeed.
Also, if we didn't cover it, I'm not sure if we did, but this just also means that Stagecoach officially canceled for this year.
Yes.
We think we said that they canceled for April, but they said that they wouldn't do an October release either.
Yeah, they're punting to 2022.
Yes. Like most artists are.
Like everybody, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so we listened to some stuff.
Yeah, I listened to 2 out of the 3 that you did.
I can take a guess at which one that you didn't listen to.
That I didn't listen to? Yes. Tell me about the Midland record.
So, Midland not only released a record, but a documentary titled The Sonic Ranch, or Midland: The Sonic Ranch.
Mm-hmm.
And it is an origin story of the band forming, as they formed literally while they were making this record, meaning that the Sonic Ranch is not new music.
Okay.
This is original, unreleased recordings, and anything that was performed that hadn't been released either. Also, some variation on released songs like 14 Years. And it definitely sounds like an origin album. It's very rough, but there are a lot of hints of what Midland eventually would release.
Oh, cool.
So if you like Midland as much as I do, you'll get a kick out of it. If you don't like Midland, this may be a bit of a bore, especially the documentary, because it doesn't really add a whole lot of anything. It's just a very behind-the-scenes creative way of making an album.
Yeah, if you like demos and you want some behind-the-scenes peek, then this is for you.
Yeah. So you know the scene in Bohemian Rhapsody where they go to the farm to make the Night at the Opera record?
Sure.
Take that 10-minute scene, stretch it out to 40 minutes with added interstitials dialogue, talking about like their backstories. And that's pretty much what this documentary is.
Or alternatively, the scene from the end of Popstar where they reunited his farm.
Yes.
And they write a song for the first time in 20 years.
Yes. And they just, it's like that. So you see the creative. Yes. Probably the more tasteful one of those.
Man, I love Popstar. I want to watch Popstar again.
Anyways. Yeah, it's a EP of unreleased song, but I guess since they can't actually get into a studio and put out a new album, this is what they did instead.
Good choice.
Yeah.
Speaking of pop star, though.
So the ripoff of Popstar, or the inspiration rather.
Yeah, the inspiration.
Justin Bieber put out an album as well.
Yeah, let's get this one over with because this is probably the one that I don't want to dwell on too long.
Yes. So this is titled Justice.
Yeah.
And if you've never heard of Justin Bieber, or this is your first record into him, you might think it's okay.
Yeah, maybe. This thing is weird for a lot of reasons.
Yes.
It's weird, one, because he just got done complaining that he wasn't up for an R&B award for his previous record.
Because this thing is heavy R&B though.
But that's the thing, is it though? Because I feel like this thing feels more like a pop record to me. So it's almost like he's course correcting already from that.
But
and I'm like, okay, so what Justin Bieber are we getting here if he wants to pretend to be an R&B artist when he's making another pop record? So that's,
but you have a lot of guest artists on this though.
Yeah, there's a lot of guest spots. So that's kind of one reason why it's weird. The other reason why it's weird is the name Justice and the fact that he wants to put in snippets of speeches by Martin Luther King Jr.
Yes.
in this thing seems to suggest that this is going to be some sort of political statement record or social statement record.
It's not,
but
though.
It's not at all. It's not. Even the quote that he chooses from Martin Luther King Jr. is, he managed to find the one time Martin Luther King Jr. was not talking about race at all.
That's how you could fit it in.
I was just like, what are you doing, Justin? What are you trying to say by naming this thing Justice? Are you just trying to capitalize on a movement? So anyways, it's very distracting. Overall, though, I thought this was overly long, as most modern pop records are. And just kind of like, yeah, we get it, Justin. Like, there's an occasional good hook on this. The guest spots don't really work for me. There's nothing memorable about this record. I thought it was a boring thing.
I didn't hate it.
Mm-hmm.
I
didn't hate it.
Didn't really remember it. Holy, I think, is the only song that I liked on there.
Because
but that
Chance
was already
the Rapper,
a single.
And that's because Chance the Rapper does so much
Chance
work making it likable, is that Justin basically adopts the Chance songwriting method, and it's very much a Chance song.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's just boring. It's Justin Bieber doing Justin Bieber. Oh, the last thing I want to talk about, though, is the last track on this thing is basically Justin Bieber whining about how lonely he is.
So I didn't get that from a narrative standpoint, where he's in the beginning of the album, he's talking about how much he is loved, how much love he has to give.
Which, yeah, going off of last week, our discussion about the Marital Bliss record, this starts off like that. For a while, I was like, oh, this is Justin's Marital Bliss record. But then it kind of loses that plot.
Right, especially when you get to the end, when he says that he's just a very lonely person.
So that track, I found out later, is a Phineas joint. To make things even weirder. And two, just seems really weird because I feel like he had to work with Phineas because those are the only people that are still sympathetic to Justin Bieber at this point. If you watch the Billie Eilish documentary, you can see that both him and Billie have affinity for Justin, and their whole family actually has some sort of, I guess, apologist narrative about Justin and his career. And so, but to me, hearing that song just makes me think of, come on, Justin, do not take the freaking victim, play the victim here. You're extremely successful. Like, I don't know. It just felt weird to me and maudlin in a way. And I was just like, no one believes you except, I guess, maybe Billie and Phineas at this point.
You think this album would have worked better if it was just a tattoo on his body?
Yeah. Also, this isn't, I should have put this in my music bits, but the EDM artist Justice has sued Justin Bieber because the cover of this album looks exactly like their logo. Say it. Fun fact.
Fun fact. I'm going to add it. All right. I'm going to add that while we talk about your Artist of the Year last year. Was that last year? 2 years ago?
That was 2019.
Yes, so your album of the year.
So here's the thing. Just like Justin Bieber has largely maybe made it more difficult to like him over the course of his career, this last year of Lana Del Rey has also kind of made it more difficult to like her. After putting out a record in 2019 that topped a lot of people's lists of best records of the year, and I do admit, although it was not number one for my year, definitely was in my top 5 and I enjoyed a lot, especially considering I didn't really care for Lana beforehand. This is a big disappointment, I think, in a lot of ways, not only because of the way she's behaved herself at the press, like to the press this last year, but also just because this record is kind of boring and languid and does not give you that adrenaline via the production like it did on the last record. So Norman fucking Rockwell, the last record, was a Grammy nominated record for Album of the Year that year. It was good. And I'm not just saying that because it was critically lauded at the time. If you even go back to that and compare it to this record, it's legitimately good. This thing is a pale imitation. And I don't know what happened.
She went back to her ethereal kind of style. Even the opening track is very a low, kind of a whisper track.
It
almost
is.
Like she has a throat lozenge.
She's up in her higher register the whole time, which she doesn't often do. And it just comes off really strange. And maybe that's what she's going for. I think there is a reading that you could take of this record that she maybe did want to go back to basics, unquote, which for her was kind of the style of the records that led to the last one. And what it led to me think is like, well, I didn't like those, and thus I don't really like this. Jack Antonoff is back as producer here, which is interesting because this is not very Jack Antonoff-y, especially coming off of the Folklore Evermore sound, the songs that he did work on, that is. It's lacking that punch that he is known to give. It's ornate, but not in an ornate orchestral way that really makes you go, wow, this is really impressive. It's just the kind that is more like window dressing and like music that you can put on in the background. Not to say
you're not wrong. I
not to say
drove around
bad.
listening to this album and then it was done. I was like, oh, it ended.
It's not bad. It's just kind of there, is kind of the way I guess I would put it. Yeah, you're right. It's something that you're like, you kind of put on and you're like, oh, I guess I'm sort of listening to this. I'm sort of paying attention. And every once in a while, Lana will say something that I'm like, that's a weird lyric, because of course, that's the trademark of Lana Del Rey. Like that one song where she name drops Kings of Leon. I'm like, sure, okay. Sure, Lana. So yeah, I was disappointed in it. It's not great, it's not bad, but it's like somewhere in the middle. And I just wasn't expecting that. And so, yeah, will not be nearly as critically acclaimed.
So I like this album better than I'd liked Norman fucking Rockwell.
What?
But then again, if we go back and rewind the tape, I didn't really like Norman fucking Rockwell.
Fair.
So maybe it's the course correction for me, audience, and not necessarily for you, audience.
And maybe... But again, of course, this is all on the back, like basically with the background of Lana making an ass of herself for the last 12 months. And so it's even harder, I guess, to kind of go up to the plate for her, especially now, because the most recent thing she said was, oh, well, my next record is going to tackle specifically the people's criticism of me. And I'm like, oh boy, get ready for that.
Right.
So prepare yourselves, because it's only going to get worse.
I mean, we'll prepare when we get there.
Yeah, when we get there.
But as for this one, pass.
We never actually said the name of it. Chemtrails Over the Country Club. And yeah, your reaction to that name is probably going to give you whatever your reaction to this record is.
Right. So these are 3 duds for music that...
Not necessarily duds, but yeah, like weird choices, I guess, from all 3 of these artists. Midland probably the best choice here. Because it's just repurposing of their existing catalog. But as for Justin and Lana, it's like weird choices for where they're at in their careers right now, I think is what I would say.
Yeah. Like I said, if you're into country and you're into Midland, there's stuff on that album you will like.
Yeah.
But then again, if you're into either Justin Bieber or Lana Del Rey, I'm sure there's songs on there that you will like as well.
There's singles on both of these things.
Mileage may vary yet again.
Mileage may vary. Yeah.
All right. So, we're not at 2 hours yet. Oh my gosh.
We have time.
We have time for video games.
There's always
we always have time for video games. So we start video games with new releases. First up, wait, I thought we already mentioned this. Yakuza, oh no, this is a different one. Yakuza 6, The Song of Life for Xbox One and PC.
Real quick, there's going to be a lot of games on this list. And the reason is because March 31st is the last day of the fiscal year. So everybody had to push their games out even if they weren't quite done. Also, there's a lot of ports on this list too.
Yep. We also have Evil Inside for the PS4, PS5, and PC. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 for PS5 and Xbox Series X. That's also another thing, is that because this is officially spring, that anything that was slated for spring 2021 can come out now.
Yep.
Or like I said, it was due in like early 2021. This is technically the end of early 2021.
Early 21 that ends here.
We also have Space Base Startopia for PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, and PC. Out of the Park Baseball 22 for the PC. Monster Hunter Rise for the Switch. Kays and the Wild Masks for the PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. It Takes Two for the PS4, Xbox One, PC, and ported for PS5 and Xbox Series X. Balan Wonderworld for PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, Switch, and PC. Doom 3: VR Edition for the PC. Disco Elysium: The Final Cut for PS4, PS5, and PC. Evil Genius 2: World Domination for the PC. And if none of that tickled your fancy, there is Narita Boy for the PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC.
Yeah. The big release this week is probably Monster Hunter Rise.
Yes, it's so big that a studio in Japan gave people a day off so they could play Monster Hunter Rise.
So there you go. Goes to show you.
Yep. I may check out It Takes Two because that's the 2-player game.
Right.
Couch co-op from No Way Out developers.
Right. Yep.
And it looks cute and fun and should be like an easy couch co-op game. So
yeah,
may look into that. May try and convince the wifey that we should play it.
Check it out.
Yep. Oh no, shit! I'm going away on vacation.
Yeah.
I might check it out.
Eventually.
Anyways, video games. There was so much news, and we're kind of running out of time. Of our own scheduled time, that we put it all into game bits.
Yes, lightning round.
Yep. First up, as I mentioned, Monster Hunter Rise, big release in Japan.
Yeah.
Companies are literally giving their workers the day off so they can play it. Nintendo and Niantic are teaming up yet again for a Pikmin AR mobile game.
So they went from Pokemon to Pikmin, just changing a couple of letters around. Yeah, this is a good fit, I think, to have little Pikmin running around. Not quite what the game actually is at this point, but it's neat.
You'd be surprised they didn't go with Mario and just have different world pipes everywhere.
Yeah, they want you to go to Japan to see the thing.
It's a $1 billion idea right there. AR Mario pipes. You click and you play a different Mario level.
If only. But you get Pikmin for now.
We also have Xbox Live is getting a rebrand, not shutting down, becoming Xbox Network.
So this isn't really a rebrand in a way where it's just a simplification. They're dropping Live as the name of basically their network and just simplifying it by calling it the Xbox Network. In fact, the N in network is not even capitalized. That's my bad. it's just the Xbox network now. So when you play online with somebody on your Xbox, people don't play with them on live. You play them on the Xbox network.
You play them connected to the Xbox, as you do.
Yeah.
You don't have it here, but Microsoft is currently looking at buying Discord.
That's not really a video game story, so it did include it. But yes, that is also
Discord is a big place for gamers to go and chat.
It is, but it's so wide-reaching, and at this point that it wasn't in my news list.
Well,
but yes.
It's in there now.
Yeah, you're right. Yes, that is not official yet. We'll I guess report if that actually happens.
Yeah, when they actually put a number on that thing, we'll report it. But they are looking into buying Discord.
Right.
Speaking of Xbox and things shutting down or being rebranded, Sony, not being left out of the game, will shut down PS3 and PS Vita, and I guess PSP. Digital storefronts on their original platform in a couple of months by, I think it's in June.
Well, it's not official yet. It seems like it will be official by the end of this month. They'll probably say a date for it. But yeah, this sucks because that means that if you have one of those older platforms and want to buy something directly on it, you're going to lose access to do that.
Or if you have one of those older platforms and have games via the PS Plus store,
right?
The free games.
So the question now is how far Sony is going with this. So the only question we don't know is whether this will prohibit people who have already bought things on those stores to re-download. Fingers crossed, hope that they do allow that, but there's no way of knowing. Nintendo, of course, famously, when they shut down the Wii store, they are not allowing re-downloads of Wii games. So Sony has that option. We hope they don't take it.
And this is just yet another iteration of us screaming into the void to buy physical media.
I mean, I get why you wouldn't want to. I personally haven't bought a physical game in a while. But this is evidence. You're right. This is evidence that they have the ability to cut off your access to these digital games whenever they want.
Yep. And I'll say it before. I've said it on this podcast, and I'll say it again. You only own something digital for the life of the company.
Yeah, pretty much. And even then, sometimes not.
Yeah. Anyways, Square Enix had its own showcase last week, which I thought we were going to cover here in its own story, but
this is the only important thing I thought I saw from it.
And that, important for us, and that would be Life is Strange 3: True Colors was officially announced.
Yes.
And that it will be bundled in their Platinum Edition with Life is Strange and Life is Strange: Before the Storm remasters.
Yeah.
As well as the Life is Strange 2.
Right.
I don't think that got a surname to it.
No, it was just Life is Strange 2. But yeah, this is cool. I skipped Life is Strange 2, but from what I understand, it was actually really well done. I'm interested in Life is Strange 3's concept. It's like the person's power, because there's always a power in these games. The person's power is more about like being able to see auras of their emotions and using that to puzzle solve, and that sounds great. So I'm really interested in what they're going to do here.
Also, Life is Strange 3 will not be episodic.
Yes.
I mean, it will be, but you'll be able to play it from day one.
Yeah, one $60 package from day one. Just one drop. So
you won't have to wait when they're going to release new episodes. It's just all there.
Yeah.
And like I said, if you pony up for the Platinum, whatever it is, bundle, $100 bundle, you'll get all 3 games, which is honestly a really good deal if you haven't played them.
Deal. Yeah.
Also from that announcement from Square Enix, Outriders, which they had talked about, their next game for service game as a service.
Yeah, same thing.
will be released at the end of April.
Yeah, also notable, it's coming directly to Game Pass when it does. So if you have Game Pass on an Xbox or a PC, you'll be able to play that game right away.
Or if you want to play the demo, it's out right now.
It's available now, yeah.
Which I did. And real briefly, it kind of made me want to buy the game. It's a pretty good demo.
Ah, okay. I've heard mixed things, so I haven't tried it yet, but
it is very sparse in a demo, but then again, it's a demo, so I'm not expecting a whole lot. But it does play like a Borderlands shooter in or like a loot shooter in a Gears of War style gameplay.
Okay.
But these narrative of different powers and skill trees, it's kind of getting me hooked in the limited demo that I played. So I might play this.
When the game comes out, I'll give it a try too, since I have Game Pass. So yeah.
I mean, if it's available on Game Pass for you, just go ahead and try it.
I'll check it out.
Yeah.
Anyway.
We also have Amazon opening a new game studio in Montreal.
Because sure.
Because, okay, go ahead, compete directly with Ubisoft.
Or more accurately, like enjoy the wealth of people already there because there's such a big gaming community there. Could be a combination.
Didn't we talk about Montreal expanding their warehouse divisions?
Yes, we did.
Yes, we did.
Yes.
I think that was mainly for studios, but for production, but
still,
it's a warehouse, and if you could put anything in there,
people there.
Yep. We also have new Switch, maybe. So we talked about the new Switch last week.
So this is a Bloomberg report again from the same sources with more specific info than last week.
Right, which includes an NVIDIA tech with DLSS upscaling, which will help it get to that 4K resolution.
Well, if you're not a tech head, all that really means is that it's upscaling to 4K. It's not necessarily native 4K, but
I don't think Nintendo could do native 4K though.
But here's the kicker though. Some people who have messed around with this DLSS technology from NVIDIA are saying that actually sometimes, because it's using machine learning to develop that upscaling technology, sometimes they say the 4K quality is actually better in the DLSS than it is in native 4K. So this could actually be a really smart decision by Nintendo because it's a cost-saving measure that actually gives you the same amount of quality that you would be getting if it was native like the other consoles. So, hey, this could work out for them.
Yeah, it could work out. But then again, Nintendo would need to announce a new console.
That's true. We'll see what happens.
In other news, Sony Interactive is teaming up with esports company RTS to purchase fighting game tournament organizer Evo.
Yeah, this one came out.
We talk about Evo all the time here.
We do. This is interesting for a couple of reasons. One, Evo was probably in need of a buyer. They've had a rough last year. Not only did their founder, or I guess president or something, I don't know his title, get attacked with some sexual assault allegations, but then on top of that, they couldn't have a tournament last year because of COVID. And so they were probably hemorrhaging money. So they were probably looking for a suitor. But the other weird thing about this is that nobody expected a console holder to do it. PlayStation's purchase doesn't really change much about the actual organization from at least what they're saying so far. They will still be pursuing games outside of PlayStation consoles. Now, whether or not those other companies want to do business with PlayStation to make that happen is another story. Of course, the one everybody's going to think about first is Super Smash Brothers and whether Nintendo is going to play ball with Sony to get Smash on Evo when they've already established that they don't even like Smash being in the Evo stage. So chances are this might be the end of Smash.
This might be their out and just say, oh, we have new bosses. Blame it on them.
Exactly. So it's the ball will be in Nintendo's court. And if it is, they're taking that ball home. They're not going to put it in play.
They're going to take it to their own Mushroom Kingdom.
Right.
We also, speaking of Sony, the new PS5 VR controllers were revealed, and they look like gauntlets.
Yeah, I think this was another one of those Thursday morning specials where we just missed it. But they look like the Vive controllers, if you're familiar with those.
Vive?
Vive.
Yeah, HTC.
HTC Vive. Where they're kind of, the tracking happens because they're like this spherical design, and the buttons are inside, and there's finger tracking.
So it's like this kind of.
So it's more feature complete than the Sony's previous solution, which was the Move controllers. So cool. It allows there to be at least a level of an established basic place for developers to develop from, since they're already developing games for the Vive VR system anyways. So it's smart of Sony to kind of get at least up to their level on this technology.
And it's been years since they updated the Move controllers.
Yes, they needed a new controller for their VR. So.
And lastly, in the game bits, Gotham Knights had been delayed to 2022.
Yeah, so if you're looking forward to another Batman game, well, you're going to have to wait a little longer for that one.
I'm fine waiting.
And that's it.
Yes. Right? Quick thoughts.
Okay.
Or this thoughts / shout-outs, I guess. I am going to things have settled down in my household, and I'm going to start back on a stream schedule.
All right.
The first one started yesterday, and I'm going to be doing a playthrough of finally Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Hey.
I have set block time out now between 4 and 6 p.m. my time. So I'll be playing 2 hours of that probably Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. I'm trying to aim for. Kind of Tuesday, Thursday for sure. Mondays are in flux. Not Wednesdays because we podcast. Not Fridays because it's the weekend. And then, not the weekend.
That eliminates a lot of days, doesn't it?
Kind of eliminates a lot of days when you're like going places and stuff. Then again, who's going anywhere these days?
Yeah. Good question. I haven't played anything. I mean, I played more Mario, but I talked about that last week. Mario 3D World in Bowser's Fury. So yeah, I'll just keep whittling away at that.
Yes, and this is your PSA announcement, since you brought up Mario.
Yes.
That you literally have 1 week left to purchase Mario 3D All-Stars, because as of next week, you cannot get that game anywhere.
Also, you have a week to play Super Mario 35, as that will also go away on the 31st. If
you buy a download code for Mario 3D All-Stars and you don't redeem it, because you get a year to redeem it, the code will still work and you can still download it, but you will not be able to purchase it anywhere.
So yeah, if you haven't already bought it, I mean, think about whether you actually still want it. And then, if you still want it, then absolutely pick it up. If you want nostalgia about those old games and want to play those old games again, it's a good way to do that. But if you're expecting literally anything else, maybe don't. That's my review of 3D All-Stars. Anyways.
I'm just saying, it's going to run out.
Yeah, it's going to run out.
The collector's edition time where you hoard it out and then wait a month for people to want it again.
Yeah. But that, everyone, will do it just over the 2-hour mark here. Thanks for joining us on this wonderful Media Boat podcast this week. We'll be back next week for another episode, maybe shorter, who can say? Things
depends if we don't stop watching stuff and reporting on it.
That's the problem. And I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. That's what this podcast is. So thanks for joining us. If you want to see us in video form, that's YouTube. Go to YouTube, search for our channel by searching Media Boat Podcast. Find it, search, like it, comment it, whatever you need to do. We appreciate it. If you want to hear us in audio form, you can do that as well. Our podcast is available on many podcast services such as Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Spotify, all those ways and more. So just search Media Boat Podcast on your given channel and find us there. You can also find us on social media, such as Twitter, where our handle is @MediaBoatCast, Facebook, where you can search to find us by searching Media Boat Podcast. Like, comment on there, we'll see it. You can also email us with questions, comments, feedback about the show at mediaboatpodcast@gmail.com. So thank you for joining us. We will be back next week with more, so stay tuned. Until then, have a good week, and bye-bye.
We'll be back next week with more thoughts, more news, and it's the end of the fiscal year. So basically everything's going to drop by next Wednesday if it hasn't.
Who knows
already.
What'll happen?
So who knows what kind of bombshells people will release. Maybe game stocks will finally fall
Who
or
can
implode
say?
or whatever.
Truly, who can say?
But we'll figure that out next week.
All righty.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.